Thank you all for being here today, regardless of what garb we chose. And yes, there are some special people who need no recognition. I think they have managed that well. But we understand, sadly, that this is our last day, which seems very bizarre. All Saints Eve, as you know, November the 1st. We're right there, and some people are going out tonight and going wild, I guess. No, others of us will repair to our homes to study and think about the new month and opportunities of All Saints Day tomorrow. But the topic is very apropos for the end of this segment, because I beg you to remember this is an ongoing process. You say, could there be more medieval? Indeed, there is, coming to a classroom near you in 2024. Okay, so let's all behave ourselves during New Year's so that we can be back and discover what more there can be. But as far as what is referred to as the early Middle Ages, Charlemagne has come, as Frank pointed out, symbolizing the future Europe, although it's a far cry short of that. However, I like to think of the three aspects that he personifies. First of all, of course, he is the Frankish king, the leader. So there you have your Germanic element, the most basic, I guess you would say. Then there is the aspect, of course, of being a Catholic Christian. No Arians, thank you very much. So that was long gone, and if he had run into any Arians, it wouldn't have been pleasant, because they're just not his crowd. So the third, of course, now we have dates to remember. Yeah, they may be on the final. Of course, you'll know this. Everybody does. December 25th, 800. So if children come to your door tonight, ask them, just say December 25th, 800, and see what they say. Well, just so you're prepared, you can remind them of the coronation of Charlemagne and see what looks you get. They'll be impressed at your scholarly demeanor and your great knowledge of chronology and other things, perhaps. But so you get that down, Judy. December 25th, 800. Yeah. So you got so many dates, but your mind is a huge, and it just expands with the years. Yes. So it's wonderful to know all these dates. Yes. His size is impressive. He was, for the standards of the Middle Ages, a tall man, and of course, as the sources will tell us, well proportioned and with an outstanding physique. But again, I think the sources are somewhat biased, shall we say, and we will consider that. The source was himself a very small fellow, and so that may have a lot to do with it. Also, he probably is on the payroll. Nothing wrong with that. We like to have grants or research fellowships. We understand sometimes we have to kiss cheeks and lick hands. I mean, this is all part of it. And we have the impression that Einhard's Life of Charlemagne which is our major source. I left it somewhere around here. I think I got so excited. No, that's yours. I have this here. Don't be jealous. You can get this, so you can always have it near you. It's the penguin version, which I got in England, £2.25. Yeah, well, yeah. But look at how it's lasted. It's sustained despite all the love. And I put a lot of love in this. So all of this is to say, most of us can't get enough Charlemagne. And certainly he is one of the most interesting figures. And certainly for Einhard, he was basically his life. Now, I suspect he is a Benedictine. I don't think there's any doubt about the monastic life as far as Einhard is concerned, but being a member of Charlemagne's court, he's impressive to us and the information because he would have witnessed much of it. He was writing it for Charlemagne's son, said this is what your father did and what you should follow on. But all in all, we will see that if you believe Einhard, based on what he has to say, Einhard tells us that Charlemagne had what I think we could definitely assume was a very interesting life. And, of course, a very great significance, either positive or negative, depending on who you are. Yeah. His father, known as Pepin the Short, for obvious reasons, was the son of Charles Martel. And we always remember him from the Battle of Tours, which is a date you may know. Yeah. So I don't want to press, but I'm just thinking I'll leave that alone. But yeah, I would review my notes on that. Yeah.
732.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. How wonderful. The knowledge represented, the minds that are here. I mean, this is like a collection of historical Einsteins. It's like, yeah. So there you are. That's Big Daddy, Charles Martel. And that would have been Pepin's father. The other point is the idea of how did Pepin become king? Well, I think, as some of you already know, it's because after Clovis, the family went downhill. And many of us know from studying genetics that it's a good thing. I know you know where I'm going. Love in the family needs to stay platonic. Unfortunately, I think these Merovingians love cousins too much. So, yeah, and I know. We've been so inculcated, I guess, that it's hard to imagine how very common this was for political reasons. Whatever the case, the Merovingians, by and large, after Clovis, are called the do-nothing kings. And of course, wherever there's an absence of people exercising the power, you can be assured that someone else is going to pick it up. So, the Merovingians after Clovis, the great Clovis, Mr. Catholic, Mr. Don't come near me, you Aryan. Yes, remember? So we always remember Clovis. You can get a copy of Gregory of Tours, or you can borrow mine. Yeah, I mean, it's like, because I wouldn't be without one, but the idea of understanding the significance. So, Merovingians going downhill. So they just basically are there. I mean, I'm sure they brought them out, wave and maybe give them, throw out candy. You know how people do to like quote unquote rulers. And then you have people in the back who are, someday this will all be mine, that sort of thing. Well, that's kind of like Charles Martel, because if he got away with all that publicity after the battle, God, believe you me, I mean, he was the star. If you're into public relations or advertising, I mean, the whole Catholic machine was operating all the time on behalf. Go, Big CM, you are the man. You are God's agent. And of course, I'm sure Martel was thinking up till his demise, why am I just an assistant? Why am I just one of the officials, like a deputy assistant vice president or whatever they call them nowadays? But basically, why can't I be king? Well, he left that task to his son. They call people like Pepin and Charles Martel mayors of the palace. These are administrative officials, and they had various areas, and I suppose they were supposed to keep folks in line and make sure that the nobles were behaving and that the military was serving correctly, that kind of thing. Military administrators, I would call them. What Pepin did, of course, was to become a great friend of the church. If this name isn't familiar, we know him as Saint Boniface, since we're having All Saints Day tomorrow. Saint Boniface was quite a great saint, as some of you know. He was a missionary from, of all things, England, trying to help heathens. And so he and another group of Anglo-Saxon Christians came over to the area of what would be the Low Countries, Belgium and so forth. And there were still pagans over there, tree lovers. Yeah. And they were, in the view of St. Boniface, quite obnoxious, and he would go around chopping down trees because they were always hugging up to them, and I love you. Arbor Day was real big for those people. But St. Boniface was a serious Catholic kind of guy. And he said, you just cut that out. So we have him. No, that's not some of your golf. Yeah. That's the axe. I know, and chopping down trees, and those old pagans were just going wild. So that will be the end of him, the martyrdom of St. Boniface. But Boniface also had his political value, because he became basically an agent of Pepin at the Roman court. And you say Roman court, well, of course, I'm talking about popes. So what will happen in essence is that Boniface at the papal court will say to the Bishop of Rome, my lord Pepin is not king in name, but is king in reality. And this doesn't seem right. And so the Pope's going, yeah, all right, it's time. And so, of course, we know the Pope is going to say, you're right, my son. It is not right. And we pull out an example from scripture about, you guessed it, Saul and David. Yeah. Saul became ex-king, remember? Because he kind of couldn't do the job. He got a bad evaluation. And of course, you know what happened. Samuel was there representing the Lord. And David got the new job. So, am I saying that David becomes Pepin? Exactly. I know. It's right there when you need it. And Boniface basically gets the message to, I guess what we can now say is the new King Pepin. And of course, we're going to have an anointment. Don't you worry about that. There's going to be the holy oil. It's not going to be just, hey, guess what? You got a note saying you can be king. No, we got to have big hoopla. I mean, it's like some people do Halloween. You got to do it up big, real big. So all of that then means that Pepin is now the new king, and you say, gosh, I guess that's important. And I love this picture. It's probably 19th century. Who is that king? His name was Childebert. He was the last Merovingian, and he's right sad. And they go like, we're sorry, you can't be king anymore. I know. He's kind of blue. And he said, and now we've got to have a little trim. He said, now I don't like too much off the sides. Just so they take him to the monastery, and you're going to get a serious, what do they have, buzz cut? Because it's going off. Yeah. And what does that mean? Means your hair's gone. And what is your hair going? Read about Samson, right? Yeah. You are the king. I mean, yeah. I mean, what are you going to do? And what are you going to do? Start praying, buddy. You are headed for the monastery. It's like, you got your training program, you got orientation, and it's all kind of activities. We welcome new monks. Yeah. But I just thought that was funny when you think about all of them doing that, because we don't want any problems, but we don't want any more activities, because, it hurts when you lose the throne. I mean, it's not like he would go quietly if he had a choice. But I would say the Merovingians had not been active in the last few years. So this is merely a suggestion of what it would have been like. And basically, in the monastery, he can devote himself to monastic activities. You can stay busy on a schedule like that. It's not like this is all about leisure and fun time, going out and getting candy. No. Work. Idleness, devil's workshop. So kings, ex-kings, I should add. I believe he had a son, but he had to go to another monastery. Yeah, because you're going on a program of chastity. Yeah, you won't be needing, companionship with the other gender. Yeah, because you just pray. Yeah, and get that hair fixed. Yeah, or that what's left. But that is the idea. So, look, Mom, no more Merovingians, and we're off with the great Pepin, crowned king, not by the Pope, but by order of the Pope, by the tree killer himself, Saint Boniface, right? So that's an interesting element to the story, I think. in 768, Pepin died, and the Germanic tradition had continued. And what Germanic tradition is it? It means that, how many sons you may have, everyone gets a piece of the pie. And you say, well, that's beautiful. They can all come together. We love each other, fraternalism, and not so much. If they had read their book of Genesis, they would know about Cain and Abel. So apparently they missed that part of scripture. But as you know, the fact is that even Pepin had a brother. I know. And he had a wife and children. But as he got older, he'd have some disagreements with Pepin. And he decided that, I'm going to miss you, honey, and I'm glad the children are coming along. You're glad to see graduate. But I've decided I could really use time in spiritual life. So I'm out of here world and hello monastery. And you say, gosh, that's really nice. So that happened. If he was coerced into that, I don't want, this isn't some sort of crime mystery or something. So I don't know if there was anything into that. Maybe he just decided that marriage had been great and he enjoyed all of that at the time, and now I want to devote to the spiritual life. But anyway, he's out of the picture. So Pepin gets it all. And you say, gosh, did he say, gee, this is just too much. I want someone to share it with. No, he seemed to be fine with that. So he took it all over. Now, his name was also Charlemagne. Isn't that odd? But now Uncle Charlemagne gave his name to his nephew, Charlemagne. And Charlemagne just happened to have a brother. And we know his name was Charles, but you can call him Charlemagne. So great that great was part of his name. How many people, maybe Charlemagne, that's like, yeah, I am. I mean, like legend in your own time. I mean, and he was really. I mean, it's like, could you imagine if they'd had the internet back then and all the publicity there would have been just day and night about this man and his life? And I mean, there were a lot of Feinhards out there, don't you worry. But the idea is it doesn't always start that way. Charlemagne and Carloman were the sons of Pepin. They didn't get along. What happens? Well, it's all kind of blurry, but let's just say that they both had families. The two brothers didn't get along, surprise, surprise. And Charlemagne got sick and died. You say, I wonder, can we get a series out of this? Well, I'm not sure. There's no proof. But we do know that his widow and offspring decided it would be better to move and find that a little suspicious. I mean, you could say, well, living in the area of the Franks, and given that his wife was from northern Italy, maybe she enjoyed the climate down there. I don't know. But they're Milan, which, as you know, it's a very beautiful area. They were Lombards, Lombardy, as we know that part of Italy. So all in all, the brother is dead, and that family is in northern Italy. but it doesn't seem like, oh, Charlemagne, we hate to leave you. This is so sad, but we'll be in touch and maybe we can get together Christmas. No, I think this was unpleasant. So, but Charlemagne seemed to be fine with it, coping skills. He said, yeah, I'm going to miss you, sis, but yeah, we know Italy's a pretty good place. Could not stand the Lombards. So he's got plans for that too. Never mind. But for right now, the idea is that they get nothing out of Carloman's, shall we say, legacy. This is all taken over by Charlemagne, meaning the whole area that we would consider now to be Carolingian, from the Latin for Carolus, Carolingian. Yeah. So, as opposed to Merovingian, right? So there you are. I mean, he's prime of life and he's in charge, and you see all those lands that he will have authority over. That land that you see there, by the way, called the Papal States, were lands that Pepin had come down and conquered from the Lombards, because at that time the Lombards were still in an Arian state, and we don't like lands held by Arians. So bad Trinity denier. So beat them up. And then what did Pepin do? He said, oh, Holy Father, Pope, Peter should have all these lands. And of course, the Pope said, you're right. And he said, I'm not going to let those Lombards, those Illyrians have any of this. So you just take it all for yourself. So that becomes the Papal States. And some of you know, until 1870, 71, much of that will continue to be papal. How can you not love Pepin? I mean, it's like, yeah, the Pope says you are a great, great kid. You're one of my favorites. So, more and more, we're thinking myself as a latter-day David, But speaking of David, I always think of Pepin in a way like Philip before Alexander the Great. I mean, sometimes I don't think when we study our Greek studies, I know you do, Dan, we all, Alexander the Great this, Alexander the Great that. But do we realize Philip was pretty great too, his dad? But when you have a son like that, it's kind of like, oh, you're his dad? You must be so pleased. I mean, that's kind of hurtful.
Keep from having assassinated.
Well, yeah. But Philip was great in his own right. And that's kind of Pepin. That was my boy. But Pepin held quite a bit of land, but of course, not as much as Charlemagne. But I mean, it's like Pepin did all right. Remember, his father wasn't even king. So I don't need to argue father and son. You can see for yourself. But you can see we're just going eastward and conquer those lands, because what kind of people are in those lands? I'll tell you what kind. Pagan kind. Heretical kind who need to be conquered, who will thank us another time. Maybe not right away, but they'll learn to love us. Yeah, I've heard that one. Again, now remember, there are Muslims, and that's troubling too. when we go up there, and you see all of that area in Bordeaux. Anyway, all of this is on the to-do list as far as Charlemagne's concerned, because if you are thinking about ideology and what must have been the young Charles aim as Christian king and warrior, and David come to this world, it's to conquer and rule. And that's what he will attempt to do in all those years up to his death in 814. Speaking of going south, here we have, and notice Penguin. Yes, I'm pushing Penguin and pushing on. So you can get this. It can be rushed to your home in early November. Yes, yeah. And you can get it in the beautiful softback or hardback if you prefer, and new or used. I can promise you that. And the idea, of course, you won't want to put it down. I heard a laugh, but I don't think that was a nice laugh. That was no. It'll bring back memories of literature class and how happy you were before you used those yellow things. What were they called? Yes, the rated X Cliff Notes. Yeah, yes. But if you would have rushed to get a copy of this, you would have said, I wouldn't want Cliff Notes. Don't get them near me. Just let me read every line. No, I'm dreaming. I'm having a fantasy. This isn't healthy. The idea of the Song of Roland from, we think, the 12th century, and much like the Iliad, something that had been recited and then finally written down, but I won't bore you with all that. It's more to be aware of the fact that this campaign, as a guy surely knew about all the tales of his grandfather and knew something of the Muslim court in the south and the Umayyads down there. And in fact, Charlemagne will have a relationship of sorts with the Abbasids in Baghdad, no less. They sent him an elephant as you know how rulers like to send each other gifts. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting in that way. But going immediately south, Charlemagne and all the entourage that we associate with Roland, Christian warriors, are in the tale at least, trying to eradicate this terrible influence. What these Christian warriors thought about Muslims is another story altogether. Some accounts I've read said that they thought Muhammad had been a cardinal in the Roman Catholic Church, and he got irritated after an election. I know sometimes when you don't win an election, you can get down, depressed. Okay, then I'll have my own church. We'll see if you like that. You pout and you mope, it can be. Yeah, it's bad to lose. Instead, it's not one of those, well, let's all reach out and have a big hug. No. So, do we like Muhammad? No. That's because he really acted ugly after that papal election. That seems so bizarre that you just can't believe somebody would really think that, but whatever. In any event, so these stories or tales tell us about this campaign, which is really the only campaign that you could say was not Charlemagne's greatest moment. He did skewer this. Let me go back to that map for a moment. See that Spanish March, that purple area, that was his area of success. But and then you see those Christian kingdoms over there, but they weren't associated with that particular effort. They were doing their own thing. But yes, the Muslims are there in Spain for quite a long time. But the idea, of course, of the Christian warrior, the great Christian hero, can you imagine again your papal gazette, and then you look at the cover, Big Frank goes and knocks out Muslim. Yeah, I mean, it probably worked very nicely. So, Cliff Notes or not, you'll want to get that Song of Roland, make that a New Year's resolution maybe, and then you can pour over it, and we'll talk about it in the new year after you've had a chance to study it, okay, and learn more. Oh gosh, now here come the Saxons. And you said, well, I love Saxons. Well, yeah, now. I mean, Anglo-Saxons, that's part of the family. Yeah. And they went over to the British Isles, but their cousins who stayed back were a very, very sad lot. Charlemagne had to see the Spanish March. I like this map because it kind of shows you where he was. You say, well, why are we involved in war so much? Well, that's what kings do. I mean, that's what, you're not out there just having a tea party. I mean, it's all about fighting in the military and that sort of thing. And Charlemagne, and I'm sure the church, saw this as his responsibility as a way to convert people who needed converting. And let's see, I have a little reading, just a little bit about it. He mentions about fighting the Lombards, then he says, no war ever undertaken by the Franks was more prolonged or more full of atrocities. The Saxons are ferocious by nature. They are much given to devil worship. Yes. Yeah. And they are hostile to our religion. Yeah. Yeah. They are so bad. How bad? Damnable. Yes. They are headed for hell. So, what do you think we ought to do? I know what we ought to do. We need to conquer them and get them baptized. So, basically, what we will be told by Einhard is this will be a long, tough campaign, but we're carrying out God's will, and we will be going with priests, chaplains, the army. So when these lying Saxon dogs are conquered, we are going to have baptismal services. There will not necessarily be confirmation classes, however. We have instant baptisms. You want to love devils? No, man, I'm not into devils at all. That was all a misunderstanding. I decided I'd like to be Catholic. Oh, well, that's great to hear. Yeah. So with this encouragement, Catholicism will be growing in the area of Saxony. Yeah. So devil is going down and the church is going up. That's the way it works. But anyway, seriously, the idea is these areas will grow. And of course, the idea is that this is all seen as the march of the Catholic Church and the Franks over, Brand X, aka the Saxons. And of course, then I think what could be more German than Saxony, but that's in another world to come. We got to get them into our sphere, and Charlemagne does that. Oh, I'm sure there were some sullen types. They were pouty at first, but you'll get over it. And we will have more confirmation opportunities and talking about the church and all the opportunities that will be yours. So that will be this campaign, which will be so very important, because while there will be others, there was none that required more, I think, of the resources of Charlemagne for that, or put him on this great map of church hero, as we would expect, from the point of view of being the great warrior, but not for himself, merely for God. For God. And why is God interested? Because God wants them to conquer devil lovers. Okay? Show them the right way. And either they can take it or leave it, and then they can get this. Yeah. But we'll have later time for love, but not now. We got some war going. Alcuin. Alcuin is the ultimate teacher. This is all part of a kind of recruiting agenda, you might call it. It's like they tell us, at least Einhard does, that basically Charlemagne checks out among the various areas, in the medieval Europe, to discover sort of the who's who of monastic scholars. And they can all be part of his cohort. And I guess you get benefits, dental, I don't know what all, but the idea is that they are doing some serious recruitment. Because Alcuin had been a monk. Oh, guess who his leader was? A name, 4 letters. Brilliance in the room. Bede. Yes, the venerable Bede, no less. You too can be venerable Frank. The venerable Frank. Yeah. Okay. Well, you let me know when you get to there.
Get to your status.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I like that. Yeah. So the idea is all these people are in the monastery, and I don't know whether they all said to Alcuin, gosh, your knowledge is so great, and your pedagogical reputation, you should put in for that position and go for that interview. You can't just take a job. Then, you got to go through the whole process. So, and no Zoom. I guess you have to go across the channel and go visit the court of Charlemagne, and then you work your way up. But he got the position. He becomes, you might say, headmaster of the cathedral school, the court, where they will do pedagogy and also a variety of activities that are intellectual in nature. Now, you can imagine if people like someone who was Byzantine saw what was going on, it would be a little embarrassing. Because it would be like if you were at Oxford and then you went, to Beauregard or something. And yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, that's okay. But Oxford, the great, I mean, so when you're thinking of Constantinople or Alexandria, and then you go over to this. But I love Charlemagne. So what can I say? It's the Carolingian cohort. So they hire Alcuin, and he becomes the teacher and intellectual leader of what will be very, very important in trying, and you notice what it says here, recover and preserve. And I know what you're thinking. I wish they had some Greek. Well, they don't. So you need to come to terms with that. I know it's really tough because we want to go Greek. But if you want to go Greek, then you go east. So we're not ready for that. It's hard. As I know you are well aware. Those of you who are fortunate enough to have had Greek in school, or maybe you want to go back and study Greek, and I bless you for that. Yeah, that's wonderful. I think you deserve high honors, because I don't care how much Latin you've had. Greek is a bear. Okay. So if you want to be a minister, something, that's more power to you. But otherwise, keep me away from reading Plato in the original. Okay. It is tough. Yeah. Very tough. I mean, from time to time, it's offered in Auburn's foreign language department, but I can't think, like tons of people are pulling in. Gosh, is it already filled up? Am I going to be on the waiting list? Yeah, right. Yeah, no, I know. And then you get to read the New Testament, the Old Testament, not to mention Aristotle's works without cliff notes. Yeah. It'll be great. You could read it in the original. So that'll be in 2025. I'll give you more time on that because you will impress you. But we love Latin because we're from that tradition. I know the Greeks are tops and the Latins are, I know. We take silver, you have gold. I get that. But you got to admit, this is beautiful. This is called Carolingian minuscule. It was produced by the scholars in Charlemagne's court or thereafter. And you say, this must have taken a lot of time. I would think so. I think it would have kept people pretty busy doing these manuscripts. And you imagine how bad you'd feel if you made a boo-boo. I mean, yeah, you'd say, oops, I made a mistake. Because as you can see, I imagine you can see very closely up in Dei Nomine Ego and Dei Gratia Empress. So this is a document. On occasion, you will see words abbreviated, but it's the way that it's written that's significant, the style of writing. It could be hard. I mean, it's not like you just dash this off. No, it's quite elegant, as you can see. And these are people who would be members of this monastic group. And so you say, well, I'm glad the devil, idleness is the devil's workshop. So we're busy doing these manuscripts, or else we're having a class, And think about the joy of that, because if you Latin students think about declensions and conjugations, and you could read some good Christian works. And we're going to look and see if you're reading any pagan, if it's a good pagan work. Know of it. Okay, so don't be reading any love books.
About Julius Caesar.
Well, that's okay. But the main thing is we just need anything that is about lust or any of that. No. A pagan, I love the gods. No. But basically, these styles of writing is considered to be one of the great contributions of the Carolingian court. And again, you have to be trained to do all of this, as you can imagine. And it becomes a kind of writing that then you can, like you do, like some of you were old enough to remember Xerox. In my day, we even made it into a verb. I've got a Xerox. So people would come. This is a terrible thing to tell you. I mean, since all of you are so brilliant. But there may be one or two now here I go to sleep the night before the test, resting the sleep of the just. And my door is opened. And you know what it is? Someone who wants to get Xerox copies of my notes. These wicked people were guilty of sloth. Do I need to? And I say, go ahead, oh errant one. I hope this will help you. But yeah, last minute, that's a little late. But I didn't say that at the age of 19, right? Just get my little trap shut. So the idea, though, of photocopying, that got real big by the 70s, I guess. Oh, I'll just make a copy of it. And so much for Carolingian minuscule, but can you imagine all the years of making copies like this? And again, you say, well, I want to do it in the vernacular. Well, good for you. French, Italian, but not for the church or the royal court. We're going to have it in Latin. So if you are not up on your Latin, then you don't apply for a job, as we know. Maybe some Greek was known in some parts, some courts in Italy, but by and large, this would have been the foundation. And what is it they are copying? Well, of course, let me go back. They are copying works from the Carolingian perspective that were considered essential to have copies of. And it will be found in the period that we call the Italian Renaissance that the only copies of some of these works they found in monasteries that people had copies of and then put away in sort of like the monastic cedar chest. It's like you store all this stuff up and nobody ever pulled it out in all those entries. It's weird, isn't it? But that's the truth. And they had copies like this. So you study the art of how this is done and how you can see it up here, I think, how there are abbreviated words and all the rest, and you learn how to do it and establish that as you work on it. But anyway, that's called Carolingian minuscule, and it's part of this Carolingian Renaissance. And again, it doesn't mean we're creating a lot of new things. We are preserving copies of the old. Because in dear old Lionheart, he would talk about what was Charlemagne's favorite reading, which is dubious because you think about what do you read? Well, it said his favorite reading was St. Augustine's City of God. Now, for those of you who are serious about your philosophy, and this could be a really great project for you during November when I'm not around, you may want to read it. It's only about 500 pages of philosophy, and that'll keep you out of trouble. But it's like this would be Charlemagne's dinner reading. I don't know why I find that dubious, but it's a nice idea that he's out there thinking about, boy, when I get me a pagan devil lover, oh, he's gonna catch it. And then somebody says, wait till you hear St. Augustine. It's all like hearing the words of St. Augustine, City of God. Yeah, I need that. A little philosophy, a little warfare, but that's what they would talk about, Charlemagne, listening to the reading of St. Augustine's work. But they made copies of St. Augustine, St. Jerome, Pope Gregory the Great, whoever it might be. And again, they're what we would call in our modern jargon, so the greatest hits of the 4th century, that kind of thing. Because man, we're living in the 800s. We're getting up there, yeah. So we're kind of hip and with it, and so we want to classical Christian source. Oh, you haven't read all of St. Augustine? Oh, you haven't seen the Confessions, huh? Wow. So, got a copy for you. You can get it on Amazon too. You get collected, greatest hits of St. Augustine. Yeah, I promise everything is available. Overnight service. So, now, how do you run a government like that? Well, the government is in Aachen, well known to people who've been to Germany and for various reasons famous in the 20th century. But in comparison with Constantinople, maybe not so much, but it did have an administration of sorts, an administration that would, within the limits of Carolingian times, I have to say it that way, because it's nothing like Constantinople, some imperial bureaucracy. This is pretty rude, crude in terms of the West in that period. But Charlemagne was trying it very hard. He and his nobles, and obviously this is like his entourage, probably like the foundations in England of the House of Lords. As you know, it's sort of like my people. They issue edicts, and then they are supposed to be carried out. He has people who then carry them out from the royal court. You'll notice there are, wherever they go, people either lay or clerical who rule over that territory, because bishops, like other people of great power, have these territories that more or less belong to them. So we send out our orders, we being king, and your orders will include essentially how many troops, where's the next conflict going to be, because like if I put it something about We want peace. We're all for appeasement. We're all for let's get along. This is serious. This is God's will, etc. So it's not a question. I didn't ask your opinion for pacifism yet together. This means you have a quota to make in terms of troops and that sort of thing, or whatever order it is. So you send it out, and to bishops, you say, well, their responsibility is the church. Well, not really. This goes all the way back to Constantine, that Edict of Milan, and it went on from there. The church and the king, we're tight. Okay. So you can't just say, I'm not into that, man. Well, then you can just get off the throne. Then. You don't have to be a bishop. So, meanwhile, they're enforcement people. It's almost as if you say, they're sending out people to come check on us, with the clipboard and evaluations and that sort of thing. Gosh, when I was fraternity advisor, they said, the national people are coming. The national, the checklist and how all of that. But the idea is here, this they call missi dominici. You notice one lay representative, one clerical representative, which I thought was interesting. So you couldn't buddy up with anybody and say, yeah, I remember you from a earlier biblical meeting, church folks. But see, the layman will get you on that because he'll say, you can't really buddy up. He's not doing the king's will. So we have to put that in the report, ratemyofficial.com. You were a big loser, and so you're going down. And how, it's like we know the basics of this, how effective it was, but we know they had a strategy of trying to maintain royal authority. And that's about the best you can do on that. They were called the missi dominici, and that would mean sent by the king. And I guess at times he would meet with all of them. It would be like they would all be on horseback, and they would get out somewhere and meet and talk. And I guess, as usual, it wasn't, well, I hope everybody has had a good season, and I hope the planning is doing well. I think it was about, as you would expect Germanic people to do, albeit Catholic, where's our next war going to be, and who's going to get it? Devil lovers. Yeah, we know about those people. They're on the hit list for sure. Saxons. I mean, they are the worst. Yeah. Then we come December 25th. And already your eyes are beaming with the excitement of children tonight getting candy, because you know what happened. St. Peter's. Charlemagne came down there. You say, well, that was so nice of him to stop in Rome. Well, it was. He loved Rome very much. He didn't get to come often because we're kind of busy with beating up on Saxons a lot. But when we can take a break. Oh, he had to take over those Lombards too, those blankety blank in-laws. Well, they had to be taken care of, and so they are no longer an issue. So that family is under security. So, yeah, Charlemagne had to break some eggs to make that Carolingian omelet, didn't he? So, yeah, we know that. But by and large, this coronation has been the subject of endless debate. And you go like, Well, it looks to me like everybody is just happy as can be. I know. It's a wonderful day. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Why didn't we have something like they tell us a great Christmas story about the coronation of Charlemagne? It's because after it happened, Charlemagne may have gotten cold feet. And you think, well, why would that be? Well, let's look at the picture. Pope Leo III had had his share of problems, disagreements, and he may well have had a sort of opposition from some factions in Rome. So, according to Einhard, some Romans actually accused Leo of high crimes and misdemeanors. I'm Pope, how dare you? No, and they were rough and they were brutal. In addition to taking his eyes out, which I think would hurt. Yeah. They also, I will not demonstrate, but they apparently took out his tongue. Yeah, the stories are pretty gruesome. Ripley's Believe It or Not, yeah. But anyway, so he was having a real bad day, and I think probably Leo the third. But according to available on Amazon, yes, tomorrow, in your box right there. It can not surprise us that Charlemagne came to Rome and under oath. That's a good question, how he went under oath when the Pope's tongue was out. But never mind that. He basically under oath said, but I didn't do these things. And Charlemagne said, sir, I believe you. And I really appreciate your willingness to take the oath. And I guess the Pope's eyes and tongues started reappearing as he said that. Yeah, it's wonderful. So Charlemagne said, well, I guess my work here is done. And this is Christmas Eve, and you think, gosh, do we have to leave? Can I still get a room at the Heart of Rome or wherever he was taking? And so they put him up. So according to this version, Pope Leo thought about it overnight and said, I'd love for you to join me for a Christmas mass, Charlemagne. Uh-huh. And you know why? Who put the crown on your head? Did some of those bad people, those tongue takers, did they help you out? No, Peter did me. So now, how do you like your crown? And then, of course, we bring out this big Roman choir and they're ready to perform, on the dot and sing, Hail, new emperor. And so they say that Charlemagne, it's sort of like got a little pouty, like children who travel too much. And, and you say, now, kids. So, he was coming all the way back to Germany and thinking, I can't believe that Pope pulled that on me. Because, of course, the idea is now, what can we call Charlemagne? Son. Yeah. You say, well, I love that, Dad, son. Let's have a big hug. Not so much, because Charlemagne thought of himself as sort of like the Pope being his chaplain, or sort of, how do they say it now? Bro, something. That's not what the Pope had in mind at all. He had some foot kissing in mind. Get down. And so this will be a big deal, and very big deal in Einhard. And of course, special delivery letters. Remember special delivery letters? I don't think they have that now, but that was a big deal. Special delivery letter from Constantinople. And you say, oh, a congratulatory letter, or a letter like, hi, bro, welcome to the Emperor Club. No, these were ugly, rude letters. Like, dear Hayseed, how dare you call yourself? But as Einhard always pointed out, the great emperor always treated this with magnanimity. He was above this. These lousy Greek, no offense, were rude, insulting, and in general, unworthy to come near. As far as that Hagia Sophia of theirs, big deal. Yeah, we've got a big old church in Aachen, and it's really neat for us. It's a good starter cathedral. Yeah, it's like we're going to get there. It'll just take us time. So, what will Charlemagne do with this new title of emperor? Well, for one thing, he's not going to use it for years to come. And when he does, he'll just call it emperor. He won't do Roman emperor, any of that. So it seems he doesn't want to be associated with anything to do with the Pope. He'll say, yeah, I'm emperor, but not because of what he did. I mean, I like my bro. He's a good guy down there in Rome because I took care of him when he had a hard time. But then, December 25th, 800, a date you will long remember till you get out the door. This is Raphael's school, they call it. And you can see it if you go to the Vatican Art Collection. I'm sure this wasn't the Raphael. I'm sure it was a Raphael groupie. Because I'm thinking, boy, somebody had a great imagination. So it wasn't exactly anything this grand, but you can get the idea. I think if you saw it, you would think of it as being 16th century, and I'm no art expert, but when I saw that, I thought, gosh, yeah, this is the big thing. You got the College of Cardinals, you got all of that, and you think, isn't this a little early for that? Yes. So, yeah, it's clearly not of the period, but I guess you paint, if you're Raphael or his group, I guess you paint for what your particular audience is willing to pay for. And I don't think they would want any Carolingian 800 situation, which would not be nearly so grand as something on that scale, because this is very 16th century and probably from the coronation of a pope of that day. He was succeeded by his one surviving son, Louis the Pious. Charlemagne crowned him, and you know why, because I don't want my boy's head touched by any pope. His power comes from Big Daddy. Yes. So we know that. It's very interesting, isn't it, to see the poem that's in the background. I thought somebody might ask me about that. This was a famous medieval poet artist. And Louis the Pious was probably in his 30s at this point. And this poem is in the background there that you can see. And when you review your Latin, you'll be able to work on this. That'll be a good December project. So you got both remaining months taken care of. So what will happen? Well, it works okay in terms of the succession, but the fact that Louis is no Charlemagne and that there are growing concerns over the empire with barbaric peoples wanting to get into those areas, and particularly from the north. More devils are on the way. These particular devils are coming by sea. And without a Carolingian navy to speak of, we will have some serious problems in those last years of Charlemagne and the years of Louis the Pious. Louis the Pious almost seems like an insult, doesn't it? But it's like you're so weak, that's the best you can do. But it's certainly true that he had children, and he had two wives, one who produced 3 sons, one of whom didn't survive. And then another wife who had this third son, Charles the Bald. And Louis the Pious then tried to do what so many parents have tried to do: divide up the lands equally. Now, I want you boys to love each other. Yes, Dad. Yeah, Dad. Yeah. You know, and we understand Lothair, who would get the middle section, Louis the German, who would get the east, and Charles the Bald, who would get the west, was supposed to work out into an ecumenical understanding that we can love each other and rule, and then make decisions expressing that love. And it didn't work out that way. I know, very odd. But that was determined in the very famous Treaty of Verdun. And in the Treaty of Verdun, way over there in Eastern Germany, that was determined that they would all work together, deal with their problems, and instead they maintained themselves in fairly constant conflict with each other. The Middle Kingdom, as usually happens to those in the middle, basically came to naught. And of course, we will have through that, as you can imagine, the beginnings of France and Germany to come. Well, thank you all for your attention. I've really enjoyed this. Please come back in January. Thank you.